Hey friends, welcome to my channel. So today we are gonna see, what if ISSEI was chosen by infinite dragon spirits? So before we start, check out my Patreon page for 1.8+ exclusive mature content. We will now proceed to the video. It was a rather dark day. Then again, the dimensional gap is always dark, so there wasn't much difference. It just so happened that two nigh omnipotent beings were taking residence here as well. They weren't exactly on friendly terms, to say the least. I told you, I'm not trying to steal your home, Infinite One. I was just passing through on my way to a rift with a strong oniric, dream-filled aura. A very large, red dragon, probably around 100 meters in size from snout to the tip of the tail, was fleeing from a barrage of attacks that didn't even have definitive colors. You aren't tricking me, Great Red. You came here to steal my silence, you crimson bastard. I, Ophis, will not stand for this. A sight that was completely out of place in a gloomy location such as this. A little girl with sweeping black hair wearing a gothic Lolita outfit was the one administering the attacks. If anyone else could survive in this twisted visage of a space, it'd look akin to a scene where a man's girlfriend was viciously chasing him down after he had done something lecherous, though the parties involved are more than a little different compared to their stereotypical counterparts in this situation. Geez, fine. If you won't believe me, I'll just have to use force. The now named Great Red decided to fight back, though he wasn't exactly excited about having to subdue a female. Hell, he wasn't even sure why he was a he. At the moment, it just felt like the right gender to take on for the situation. Something was going to happen that required him to be a male. Though it wasn't sure what it was. For that matter, Ophis wasn't sure why it was a girl either. It had never bothered with genders, seeing as how there was even a being that could converse with it regularly until Great Red showed up, so there was no need to pick a side or do anything. Why was she so angry too? Normally, emotion wouldn't even register in her. But this creature got her hot and flustered for some reason. Conjuring up a fireball many times larger than Ophis, Great Red sent it at her with alarming speed. Ophis stood her ground, and raised her aura. Conjuring up a cyclone-like gust of wind, she created it, as the fabric of reality in the dimensional gap is too unstable to support elements or anything definitive that pushed the ball of inferno into parts unknown. Smirking, she waved her hand and created a mass of black flames, wielding it like a sword. She had taken on the form of a black dragon with red eyes, equally as large as Great Red on every account. These are the flames of a lesser deity from a place called Earth. I think her name was Amaterasu or something like that. They're hot enough to make even me take notice, so I'm sure they'll do the job. Suck it, you red asshole. She closed in on Great Red and thrusted the sword in a rapid fashion, intending to make Swiss cheese out of her opponent. This bitch, Great Red had thought. Summoning a shield with intricate designs on it, he held it up at every point that the sword looked to penetrate his defenses. No matter the amount of effort she put in, Ophis could not break the shield. Much to her growing chagrin. Stopping her onslaught, she yelled out a question. What the hell is that shield? One of the treasures of a place called Japan, I think, the Yata mirror. Said to be able to reflect any attack. With a wide, toothy grin, Great Red finished his explanation. Ophis' aura started to flare even more, causing the already unstable space they were in to deteriorate into a black void. This is bad. If she keeps getting pissed, this place will fall apart and I'll have to jump into the nearest rift until it repairs itself. That could take forever. Thinking of a way to stop the infinite dragon god, as she proclaimed herself, he remembered where she had said that she got those flames she used. Wait, Earth. That's it. Taking out a souvenir he had gotten from the dream-filled place on his last visit, he waved it in front of Ophis' face. The effect was immediate and tangible, as the dragon god calmed her aura down and eyed the object with increased attention to detail. Deciding to speak up, she narrowed her eyes. Where did you get that? You know already, was Great Red's response. I got this little trinket here from that dime and scion that houses the place called Earth. Upon hearing this shocking revelation, Ophis' expression became ecstatic. Oh yes, it had been so long since she had seen this wondrous orb called takoyaki. Gimme. Like a child pouncing on her Christmas presents, Ophis made her way across the gap, no pun intended, between them and tried to snatch the snack from the other dragon. She failed. On one condition. Great Red had planned this all through, he wouldn't simply let it be snatched away from him because she was impatient. You are to never, for as long as we immortal beings live, chase me around again. My athletic points are at 1. I'm a lazy dragon who's not suited for all this running, ya know. Apparently, this monster of a dragon was what one would call an otaku, which seems to be why he visited Japan so much. If he could make anything else immortal, like himself, well he can, but only living beings, it would be the concepts of manga and anime. Deal. Ophis couldn't refuse sweets or anything she deemed delicious, so she hadn't much of a choice in the matter. Well, if you'll excuse me then, I'll be on my way to Earth. Have a nice day, night, whatever. With that, Grey T-Red took his leave for the now shrinking rift to Earth. Ophis, not one to emote normally, felt she had to show this nice guy the thing called gratitude, that everyone on Earth showed when they were thankful for something. Like having someone to help get a kitty down from a tree. She racked her infinitely knowledgeable brain until she remembered what people did on Earth to thank one another. Sexu, she muttered. Just then, Great Red felt a chill go down his spine. He was frozen in place, literally. Ophis had cast an ice spell on him, for what reason he didn't dare to dream. The rift was rapidly closing, and he had no other way to get to Earth. Ophis drifted into his sight upside down. Sexu. What? You mean that activity lower beings participate in because they can't just simply clone themselves? No thanks. GR refused, he saw it as a waste of time. Number choice. Ophis made it clear that it was her way or the highway. Since she'd probably just chase him down again if he chose to break free and run, he complied. Oh joy. Time skip. 2 years. Whoever knew the beings of that world participated in such fun activities, GR boomed from his chest. It had been 2 years since what he referred to as the Big Bang, and he now stood over his son. I told you so. Ophis had a triumphant smirk on her draconic face, indicating that she felt somewhat accomplished. The passing of 2 years was like an attosecond to immortal beings, so the memory of this sexu activity was still fresh in their minds. From it came a being who was the combination of both of them, a dragon who had chosen to take on the form of a male at birth. His name was ISSEI, although the meaning the word held didn't apply to him as he wasn't even born in a regular dimension. We should probably let him visit Earth for a couple of thousands of years. Great Red, whom Ophis aptly named the Vacation Dragon, stayed true to his namesake. If he's ever in trouble, either one of us could easily go do WN there since we learned how to open the rift there specifically. Ophis was floored. She had known her son for less than a second in her time, and now this lazy bastard wanted to send him off to an environment that a war was fought in last she visited. Not opposed. She didn't really think it through much after all. Her motherly instincts were kicking in, but she thought it'd be good, a world or two and had grandkids, yes. She's the doting mother type. Let's do it. Ahahaha, that's the spirit. GR opened his mouth and fired a beam of incredibly dense fire in no particular direction, inking the earth and the dimensional gap. Wait, Ophis shouted almost immediately. She waved her hands, and Issei changed from his current form into the rendition of a Japanese male that she had seen prior to leaving Earth, good to go. Shortly after, Issei was tossed into the rift and ended up in Japan, his omnipotent parents shedding anime tears at his departure. Find a woman like your mother. Don't be like your dad. With those goodbyes, the portal closed, and so began the tale of Issei, the dragon god emperor. A small boy drops from the skies of Japan into an alley. This boy is the result of the union between the two most powerful beings in existence, both of them being dragons, and his name is Issei. Due to his heritage, his cognitive abilities are far above what a normal 2-year old from any race in this world is capable of, being able to walk, speak clear, complete sentences, read, and discern various things. His power is something akin to a sick joke, even from the view of those who rule over the various pantheons. However, said power is not as easily controlled as his parents would have one believe, and he has no knowledge of this new world. For that, he will need to find a way to gain knowledge and hone his skills. Having landed on a dumpster lid, Issei got up and began to wander. The landing was of no consequence to him, since even his infant body is capable of withstanding blunt trauma on par with what the current rulers of the underworld could dish out. He wandered through the empty alley, oblivious to what the various signs and markings meant. It was night time, but that hardly hindered him since it was a perpetually dark shade in the dimensional gap all the time. Stumbling, he came about a grotesque sight. Bodies piled up as far as he could see, and one very strange being standing. Or rather, crawling next to them. This meal should last me for the next few days. I can't wait. This strange being had the lower body of a snake, with the upper half being a bear. Moderately busty human woman with sharp fangs and slit eyes. The pile of bodies was letting out a putrid odor, one that upset ISSEI. He wasn't quite sure what he was looking at, but he knew that it upset him and he needed to make it go away as soon as he possibly could. Harnessing his power, he thought with all of his might, and then, it happened. The bodies just suddenly vanished. No trace of them having ever existed left behind. The monstrosity took notice of this, and turned towards ISSEI. What? Where did my meal go? I guess I will have to do with this little munchkin here for now. Stray devils like myself have to get what we can, after all. She approached ISSEI menacingly, savoring the taste that she was sure she was going to get. ISSEI, instead of cowering away or crying like a normal child would, actually smiled softly at the abomination slinking towards him. The stray saw his smile and was bewildered. Is death funny, brat? She wasn't amused. This would only make him more of a morsel if he was a joke type. Let's play, Toy-chan. ISSEI bellowed those words out. This only served to further confuse the stray, but no matter. She lunged at him, her rapid approach filled with hunger and malice. Yay, playtime. ISSEI stood there, happily going on about playtime. The stray reached him and tried to bite into his flesh, but to no avail. Complete confusion set in on her human half's face after she let go of her grip. What? This brat is tougher than I thought. Whatever, I'll just have to tenderize the meat first then. She whipped her tail around, intending to swipe ISSEI into the side of the building they were standing by. The child simply caught the tail, halting all of its progress. Swinging the stray around, he threw her several meters into the air and let her fall back down. After getting up from her freefall, the no-name stray was visibly hurt, with various scrapes and cuts among her body and face from her landing. Donning a pissed expression, she hissed loudly, "Why you little?" She was caught off guard as ISSEI had vanished. He reappeared behind her and grabbed her tail, ripping it off in one swift moment. Buckets of blood squirted out, and the monster was stunned as well as in enormous pain. Gah, fuck, she audibly cursed. Why is this kid so fucking strong? To top it off, he doesn't even look like he's taking me seriously. That's it. I'll kill him if it's the last thing I do. Yay. Toy-chan's tail comes off. ISSEI continued having fun and games at the stray's expense. It was quite frankly a miracle. No one had come to see what all the commotion was about. The place was deserted beyond explanation. I didn't kill all of the people in this district to be beaten by some brat. The stray, no. Seething with rage and unable to maintain her balance because of her lost appendage, prepared for one final attack. Opening her mouth, a sword squeezed itself out. She took it in her left hand, chanting a spell and forming symbols with her right. Levitation, she whispered. Due to her tail having been lost, she couldn't get around without using this spell and it would take quite a while before the full length of it grew back. She needed this child dead now, before he became even more of a problem in the future. She knew not what she had done. I never thought I'd have to use the sword of Kusanagi that was stolen from the Shinto faction to kill a mere child, but all's fair in love and war. This sword can kill even high-class devils. Lunging at him with all her might from in the air, she brandished the sword towards his chest, intending to strike at the most critical part of his body, his heart. However, she was too slow. ISSEI had already gotten behind her. Here, Toy-chan. Ohm says you have to give things back to people and be nice. With a smile, ISSEI swung her tail at her. Due to not even having perceived him moving yet, she was completely blindsided and fell hard to the ground. ISSEI landed flawlessly, wondering why she wouldn't take her tail back. Nay Toy-chan, don't you want this back? Here, take it. With an innocent smile, ISSEI proceeded to beat her with her own tail. When it wouldn't fit back together at the place of removal, a light bulb popped over his head. Surely the head would be a good place to try next, right? He changed his target, wailing on the stray's head until her tail fit back together. Sadly, it never did. The stray's head burst. Issei was sad, not because the stray died, but because he didn't have anyone to play with anymore from the looks of it. He became teary-eyed. I broke Toy-chan, sniffle asterisk wahhhhhhhhhhhhhhh. He began to cry hysterically. His parents' tendency to get bored quickly when interesting things ceased was very apparent. Elsewhere, a being that radiated power and light stood atop a building. She was exceptionally beautiful by any standards, and seemed to have taken an interest in the battle she just watched. He's only an infant, yet his power is such that he can completely outmatch an S-rank stray equipped with the sword of Kusanagi with ease. Of course, only beings as strong as her brother could wield it properly. But it was still an achievement an infant shouldn't be capable of by a long shot. And what of that power she seen earlier? The bodies just vanished from sight, as if they were only just an illusion, a dream. This boy might be able to upset the balance of power in the world very soon. I must have him join my faction. Jumping off of the building, this mysterious, buxom woman appeared before Issei. He noticed her presence, yet his tears still flowed endlessly. Hello there, child. Say, what if I said I could give you more interesting things to play with? At the mention of such things, Issei brightened up slightly. His tears stopped flowing, but he was still sniffling and spoke in a broken voice. Could you sniffle? Could you rehild? I can. All you'd need to do is come back to Kyoto with me and I can give you all the interesting things in the world. Oh, before I forget, that sharp thing over there is interesting too. We'll need to take it back with us, sweetie. She liked this kid already. He was extremely strong, and called her, Nei-san, instead of, Obaa-san, like most other beings. Issei said nothing as he contemplated the benefits. Even his childish mind could see that there was nothing to lose. But he needed to confirm something. Nei-san, will there be sweets? Apparently, Opha's sweet tooth had been passed down too. Yes, there will, all the sweets you can handle. The older woman said cheerfully. Then yes. Issei yelled enthusiastically. Opha's probably would have been proud. All right then, hold on to my hand then. Oh, before I forget you can call me Amaterasu Nei if you want, kid. All right. Quote. With that, the two vanished from the night. The world had just gotten its first glimpse of the Dragon God Emperor. Time skip, 13 years. Issei, did you decide what high school you wanted to go to? It's opening day across the nation, ya know. A voice rang out from the interior of a grand palace. I think I want to go to Kuo Academy, Amaterasu Nei. Issei yelled back. He was now a 15-year-old boy, having been raised by the leaders of the Shinto faction. He was 6 feet with a muscular build and had his trademark brown hair, but that wasn't his true form. Along the way, he had apparently discovered that he could transform into a large, black western dragon with green slits for eyes and a golden horn on his nose, traits he inherited from both of his parents. None of this mattered anyhow, as he learned how to shapeshift at the age of 5 with Amaterasu's tutelage. What? That place is filled with devils, ya know. Amaterasu spat the words out. Ing witnessed Issei being attacked by a devil that fateful night. She had definitely grown into the role of Oni-san that Issei had labeled her as when they first met, watching over and doting on him. I'll be fine, Nei-san. You taught me. Remember, Issei was wholly confident in his big sister's teachings. It didn't hurt that he was already in the top 10 strongest beings in the world either, ing on par with the heavenly dragons in their prime when in his resting state. Fine. Just make sure you're safe, and don't forget your sword. She lectured him half-heartedly. Pocket dimension, Nei-san. Issei yelled back from his room in the palace. With those departing words, he focused on his school of choice in his mind, and teleported to the front gates. This was another ability he had learned in his years of tutelage. He didn't need the help of a spell or gate to make the jump. He could also read minds, sense auras, be they normal humans or supernatural, had greatly augmented physical abilities, regeneration, etc. He was practically an army unto himself, but had glaring drawbacks. He couldn't ever find out how he erased those bodies back when he first came here, and would suffer migraine whenever he tried to call forth any of the strength of his parents in a non-battle situation. There was also the fact that an alluring woman could more often than not get him to let his guard down. He wasn't a pervert or an idiot, quite the opposite. He detested harming females and was a perfect gentleman, but this naivety would land him in tight situations if he was ever to be required to battle one seriously. That was something Amaterasu had lectured him on, though she was oddly proud of him as well for it. Sugoi. This place is so nice. He took in the sights, before his innate ability to sense auras kicked in. From what he learned from Amaterasu, there were many species living on this planet, although there were 3 that recently had their numbers reduced to near extinction levels. These 3 species comprised the Christian faction, and were the devils, angels, and fallen angels respectively. They had lost their main god and underworld rulers long ago, but they were still dangerous. Looking around, Issei seen mostly weak human auras, not that he hated humans in particular, some of them were just very rude. Catching slightly larger auras from 2 different directions, he turned towards them. The first was a building with around 5 people in it, one aura separated from the others. Issei knew this to be the orc building he had read about in the pamphlet in preparation for coming here. Next, he turned towards the school. There were numerous signatures, one of them strikingly superior to the others. Pinpointing where they came from exactly was a task, so he didn't know what role they played in the school, but would probably greet them nonetheless someday. Walking into the gates, he flared his aura ever so slightly to alert the other supernatural beings, having an air of mischief around him that he no doubt got from both of his parents. Orc clubroom. Akino, did you feel that? A redhead blurted out. Hi, Rias Bushu. It was very strong, and very manly, ufufu. A black-haired Bashoujo with violet eyes, Akino, said back to Rias. That power was nearly on par with ultimate class devils. Whoever that is, I need them to join my peerage. The bell rang, and Issei walked into his first-year homeroom, eager to see whom his classmates would consist of. Instantly scanning the room over with his enhanced abilities, he was a little shocked. The vast majority of the classroom was girls. Come to think of it, he had seen almost nothing but females on his way here. It wasn't in the pamphlet, but he assumed that this place had just recently turned co-ed due to the overwhelming female population. Time seemed to slow down as he continued to scan. There was a much larger aura coming from a seat in the back of the classroom. Using his vision, he noticed that the source was a petite, white-haired girl that gave off the impression of a cat. She bore no expression, but seemed to be actively hiding something nonetheless. Issei noticed that she was a devil, but felt it wasn't gentlemanly to pry into her secrets, so he didn't investigate. I'd like to welcome all of you to your first year at Kuo Academy, the teacher went on about greetings as Issei took his seat. Directly behind the white-haired girl. She reacted ever so slightly to his presence, probably sensing his immense power even though he had it massively suppressed. This must be the boy Bushu was talking about. Flashback. Listen up, everyone. Rias spoke with a tone indicating authority and superiority. It has come to my attention that a recent addition to this school is exuding a large aura of supernatural power. I'm sure you all felt it, so let's lay down our plan of action. Should any of you meet him, you are to approach him and bring him to the clubroom by any means necessary. His aura is unique among this whole school, so you'll notice him right away. After that, I'll handle the rest. Is that clear? A consensus was reached instantly among her servants, whom all responded with a prompt, "Hi, Bushu." The members took their leave, getting ready for classes to start. End flashback. Tuju-san, Kaneko Tuju-san. The white-haired girl snapped out of her daydream. The teacher had been calling her name for an indefinite amount of time it seems. Here, she croaked out in her monotone voice. Rias had told them that school was important, but their duties as a devil took precedent over near all else, so it wasn't a shock that she was neglecting her studies right now. Issei-san. Here. The humanoid dragon yelled out with enthusiasm. He was genuinely excited to be here, and it showed. He didn't know why, but an odd sense of nostalgia washed over him just from being located in Japan. Kaneko was startled by this outburst, but kept her detached expression present. The day went as one would expect it to in a normal high school setting. Classes ended, and Kaneko, remembering her master's orders, approached Issei, trying to stomach being near his immense aura all the while. "You," she said rather bluntly. Come with me, confirm it. There were 2 hotspots for devils in this place, so either she'd take him to the orc building or to wherever the other batch of devils was located. Doesn't matter, let's go. This short, emotionless girl who gave off a cat-like impression was a nostalgic hotspot for ISSEI. She reminded him of his mother, whom he honestly barely knew. In fact, ISSEI was completely oblivious to what his heritage meant in this world. He knew who his parents were and what they wanted to be called, but that was about it. He didn't even have the vaguest idea of their status as dragon gods, nor a hint of the benefits this could afford him or the powers that he truly possessed. The only beings in this or any other world he knew well were the Shinto Trinity, Amaterasu, Tsukuyomi, and Susanoo. Nonetheless, he was more than happy to oblige Kaneko and follow her, if only to be a gentleman. Orc Clubroom. Bushu, I've brought him. Kaneko knocked on the door, speaking in her emotionless voice. Fantastic. Come in. ISSEI was curious. The person who answered had a sweet, charming voice that seemed to suggest that it could fulfill all of his desires. Amaterasu had warned him that this was just a ploy. Devils were inherently good at playing on the desires of anybody who they wanted to manipulate, and would use almost any means necessary. While a gentleman, ISSEI was no fool. Deception was a lesson the Shinto Trinity had taught him well in. He made sure his guard was up should more than a talk happen at this moment. Upon opening the door, ISSEI saw a rather fitting space for devils. A relatively dark room with low candle lighting and dull-colored couches on either side of the room. He could detect a hint of a shower handle being turned, and saw 2 people in the room, minus the one who was likely in the shower. Era, Bushu, here are your clothes. The busty, violet-eyed temptress known as Akeno stood by a veil with clothes in hand. Thank you, Akeno. Replying and gathering her clothes, Rias came out of the shower still drying her head. Sorry to have met you in such an unruly state, I just wanted to make sure. Nothing was out of place for when we met. Her voice's tone didn't miss a beat, every bit as alluring as it had been through the door. No, it's fine, Ms. President. ISSEI gave her a sincere smile as a gesture of friendship. Era, I should find it funny that you know I'm the president. Rias gave him a smile back, if only to be courteous. Well, I did a lot of research before I came here. You and the other beautiful lady over there, Akeno Senpai, are Kuo's 2 great Onisamas. Even the 3rd years call you to that. Plus, everybody who's addressed you has called you Bushu, so far. ISSEI said that in a sincere tone. Though he had simply read the minds of a couple of staff on the way down and used a bit of common sense, of course, Kaneko was oblivious to the mind reading. Era, you're a well-prepared man, I see. Akeno made a sultry smile appear on her face, with a hint of mischief hanging over her. She liked men who could use their cunning to get what they wanted, granted the measures weren't too extreme or costly. Playboy. ISSEI suddenly had an arrow that read exactly what Kaneko had just said lodged into his head, causing his smile to falter for the briefest of seconds. This girl was like his mother through and through, at least the few vague memories of his mother he could recollect say so anyway. His dad did tell him to find a woman like his mother, that much he remembers. Sporting her trademark devil grin, Rias brought the attention back to herself. Well, since you're so well prepared, ISSEI-san, I'm sure you have at least a clue of why I called you here. Rias was never one for beating around the bush to get what she wanted. Nope, not at all. ISSEI replied with his honest feelings. He didn't know why a group of devils would want to see him so suddenly. But it didn't bother him since he was confident he'd win in a fight even if all of them came at him. Well, I know you've noticed the aura about us, as we have about you. ISSEI, we are devils. And I'd like to extend a formal invitation towards you to join my peerage. With that declaration, every member in the room besides ISSEI unfurled their devil wings for him to see. Ah, Devil Sans, I see. I've studied about you all before. But I'm sorry, I don't know what a peerage is. Basically, a peerage is a group of low-class devils under the command of a high-ranking one. As you probably guessed, I am the high class and everyone here is my servant, though they're more akin to family, I should say. Rias explained the many intricacies of devilhood, including things such as hierarchy, reincarnation, certain benefits and even potential benefits. ISSEI, you could have all of that, plus maybe even a harem if you become a high class like myself one day. Rias thought this was the icing on the cake. No man could resist their desires, no matter how powerful he may be. Issei thought about it long and hard. There certainly were a lot of benefits to be had, and no one could argue against such sound reasoning if he were to join. He stole a glance at Kaneko, who did indeed remind him of his mother. Everyone in the room was of a particularly high status at Kuo Academy. Kiba, the first-year prince, the two great ladies, and the mascot. Only a fool would decline after having seen all of this. I'm sorry senpai, but I must decline. I wouldn't be opposed to joining the club and meeting the other Devil Sans, though. Issei had remembered Amaterasu's words, and steeled himself. Even more so than greed and avarice, temptation was a devil's strong suit. He couldn't be pulled into their affairs so easily and leave his Shinto guardians behind, seeing as how they practically raised him. Oh, I see. Well, you are welcome to take my offer up anytime you wish. Just stop by and I'll have the process done quickly. Rias was visibly still a stunning beauty, but she was defeated inside. No one had ever been able to refuse an offer from her, though she surmised that he could have nearly a thing he wanted with the level of power he had anyway. She made clear that her offer was indefinite in the hopes that he'd change his mind someday, preferably sooner than later. After all, she had get rid of that situation quickly before it came to a head. I appreciate it, Grumori-senpai. If possible, could I meet the other Devil Sans today? I'd like to talk with them too. Issei had to make certain that he knew of all the potential allies or threats he had in this school, as was customary in his training with the Shinto faction. Flashback. Everyone is your enemy, Issei. Don't trust a soul out there. And use force if necessary. Amaterasu shouted at Issei as he made his way across a large castle encircled by a moat of black flames. This was combat training, as she had experienced the civil war that the biblical faction had fought and wanted to make sure that her little brother was prepared for any trials that might come his way should fighting break out again. A hail of arrows came around a corridor, being guided to their target by magic and coupled with enhanced piercing power. Yata Mirror. Shouting out its name, Issei's sacred shield had appeared. Great Red had GIV. Ended back to the Shinto faction after Issei's birth, and expanded in size, encompassing the totality of his back area. The arrows bounced harmlessly off of it, breaking after a single moment of contact. Don't stop. Your blind side is always open. Upon her declaration, several lesser replicas of Kusanagi appeared and lunged at Issei. A shadowy figure appeared a few meters in front of him, seemingly beckoning him to safety. Issei's mind slowed the carnage down. His blind side was a troublesome place to guard, so this stranger's help would be appreciated. Channeling his latent energy into his feet, he made a mad dash for the perceived safe haven. He successfully dodged the swords, and they landed harmlessly on the ground. Unfortunately, upon arrival to the shadowy figure, a hand had penetrated his chest. Didn't Lady Amaterasu tell young kid? A beast with the visage of a hideous monster spoke from its mouth. Especially not an Oni. Don't worry, I didn't, Monster-san, a voice from above came. It was Issei. Completely unscathed. That moment that he had increased speed, he did so exponentially, going faster than sound to move silently and creating an afterimage in his trail. The Mirage Issei disappeared, and the real one continued on through his trials. The Oni was impressed. Not bad, kid. I see why Lady Amaterasu places so much stock in you. End flashback. Era, so soon. IAS was moderately shocked and worried about this. What if he simply wanted to join the other peerage here in this school? Had Sona already gotten to him and offered a better deal? She kept her outside appearance composed, but was being true to the definition of a worrywart on the inside. If possible, yes please senpai. I don't mind waiting, but the sooner the better. Well, I can't tell you if. The student council is on duty right now, but they'll surely be here tomorrow. Rias truly didn't know if Sona was still here, but it'd be better to her if she wasn't. She was a devil, and was as die as Rias herself when push came to shove after all. She couldn't risk Sona getting a leg up on her. In truth, that's all Issei had wanted to know. Not if they were there, but who they were in the first place. Now that he had gotten his answer, he turned for the door. Well, that's all right then. We all go to the same school, so it's not hard to get in touch. I'll be taking my leave then, by everyone, by Kaneko-chan. Issei hadn't noticed that he named Kaneko specifically. With a gait that held decent speed, he shut the door and walked out. Rias was visibly surprised, as was the blonde-haired pretty boy in the orc, Kiba. Akano just went with her trademark smile. Since when did he start calling you, Chan, Kaneko? Don't know. Kaneko replied with a deadpan expression. She had literally just met him today. Though he certainly wasn't someone she needed to be hostile towards. He wasn't a pervert by the looks of it, a loudmouth, or someone who was stupid academically. He could be a bit of a playboy. But that was probably just her bias speaking. Kuo Academy Bridge. Issei had lived with Amaterasu up until today, so he didn't have a formal home here in Kuo. He had forgotten to go and try to rent one. Amaterasu gave him a small fortune. There was no on-campus boarding, aside from Rias maybe letting him use the orc building at night, but he simply didn't want to stay there. He pondered where he'd be staying tonight and beyond, until he felt a rather insignificant aura coming his way. It gave off the impression of a crow. He had stopped in front of a black-haired teen with a buxom figure. She had on an odd school uniform, one that he had never seen before. The letter, P, was embroidered on the chest area. This must be a fallen angel San. Issei remarked internally, remembering his lessons. Anyone who gave a crowish impression was a fallen one. What could they want with him? I've seen you passing by here as of late, and I was wondering. The raven-haired beauty blushed and tripped over her own words. I've been wondering, are you seeing anyone? Issei was even more confused. Was she asking him to be with her? Deciding that it'd just be faster to read her mind, he did so. This brat isn't much to look at, but I have to bear this humiliation for the sake of my plans. I can't have him snooping around with such power at his disposal, whether he knows it or not. This lady was obviously hostile. Issei had to come up with a plan and fast if he wanted to avoid getting dragged into whatever she was cooking up. He thought hard, remembering all the places he had been today. It then hit him. Actually, I am. Her name's Kaneko. He was, truthfully, highly embarrassed that he said that, but she was the person he felt the closest to out of everyone at school he had met so far. The resemblance to his mother helped no doubt, and she didn't look like one to be violent over small, explainable things. Oh, you are. The beauty was stunned. ISSEI took this opportunity to quickly read her mind once again. This brat turned me down. Me? How dare he? I thought all the men at this place were losers who'd do anything to get their dicks wet, tch. I didn't count on him having a girlfriend. What now? Issei smiled internally. His makeshift plan had worked, though he felt oddly dissatisfied. Where was the fun in turning someone down right off the bat? He'd see what she had to offer in terms of amusement, and if things got rowdy, he was confident he could handle himself. But things aren't going so good between us right now. I actually could use a break. So you could say that I'm not actually seeing someone right now. Oh, by the way miss, what's your name? The girl stranger's face instantly brightened up, although it was obvious to Issei that it was a farce. Yuma, Amano Yuma. Thank you so much. How about we go on a date tomorrow evening? Sounds fun, I'll be there. Issei had an air of mischief around him akin to Akano's. The female turned around and started running to who knows where, waving as she left. Bye, and I'm really glad that you're my boyfriend. Issei stood there satisfied that he had been able to formulate two different strategies in one instance. He felt like he was forgetting one crucial detail though. That's right. Where am I gonna stay tonight? I don't want to leave this city just yet. Issei began comically pulling on his hair, not sure of where he'd stay the night at all. He walked across the bridge, strolling until he wasn't even sure he was in the city limits anymore. Just then, Issei felt a stinging headache coming on. He kneeled and clutched his forehead in agony, removing his vision from the horizon. When he came back up, the headache was gone, and on said horizon was a house. One that he thought suited him perfectly actually. Whoa, where'd that come from? And the door's not locked or anything. Issei quickly searched the area for any bystanders. I'm sure no one will be up. Said if I just lounge here for one night. Opening the door and finding what he could only describe as a paradise, he leapt into the bed seemingly custom-made for him and turned on the working flat-screen TV. Next to him was a pool. A soda machine, all the current consoles, and a few past, a desktop PC, and many other luxuries. This can't be real, but I don't care. I'm gonna party like it's, is. ISSEI didn't remember the year of the expression. I'm gonna party. And with that, he spent the night like any irresponsible teen would in a luxury household by themselves. He was right about one thing though. This all did seem like a dream. A white-haired figure came out of hiding back near the bridge. She was licking a popsicle, and had a slightly astonished look on her face. In a tone even she thought was boring, she spoke. When was I ever his girlfriend? ISSEI stirred, trying valiantly to wake up from his junk food-induced slumber. Upon rising up, he wiped his eyes and gained clarity on what was reality and what wasn't. His dreams, for as far back as he can remember, always had this special quality about them. He could swear that they weren't dreams at all, that he was actually living whatever he was doing when he slept. One could call it lucid dreaming, but whatever it was, ISSEI could feel every sensation and emotion as if he were awakened in his own flesh. He didn't bother much with it, thinking it just an innate abnormality. He wasn't exactly wrong in his guess. Whatever, he'd find out later. For now, he got up and freshened himself up to take a stroll. ISSEI didn't really need to sleep much at all. A leisurely nap would have him at full power within the hour with no fatigue. He mainly went into slumber to try and figure out just why it was that his dreams felt so real, but just as tonight. He could never figure it out. My date with Yuma is today, but it's also the day I was supposed to meet with the Devil Sans from the student council. This Mai, in his hazy state of mind, recalled that he did indeed double book himself for the day. He had to find a way to multitask. He placed his palm on his fist after a few minutes of thinking, apparently coming to a realization. I'm not perfect with the technique like Aniki, but I should be able to hold it for a few hours. Putting his hands together, he whispered, Cage Bunshin. A puff of smoke appeared, and out of the smoke came an exact replica of ISSEI. This replica had all of his powers, only to a lesser extent, and it'd disappear altogether if it sustained too much damage. Still, even half the POW or ISSEI possessed was more than enough in most situations. The technique had been taught to him by Tsukuyomi during his combat training. Tsukuyomi was associated with the moon and illusions, so this technique came naturally to him. Yosh, this should do for later. Releasing the clone with the snap of his fingers, ISSEI stretched and then patted himself on the back for solving yet another problem. He envisioned his mother and father being proud of him, though he didn't know exactly how that would look. He also envisioned getting a hug from Amaterasu, which was one of his rewards whenever he excelled at something. Despite being the gentleman he was, he'd always be prone to feeling the desire to grope her, as she had a very ample bosom. In fact, he had come across quite a few people with ample bosoms at school yesterday. He didn't stare or declare his love for them like the two idiots who got beat up by the kendo girls did, but he had a healthy appreciation for the female body as a result of spending so much time with a literal goddess. A wave of malice hit him out of his stupor, and he turned in the direction it came from. Despite the omnipresent maliciousness, he also felt a bit of another aura, faith. What was that? I'd probably better go check it out to make sure. Finishing getting dressed, he walked outside of his home and began his trek under the cover of the night in the direction the malice was coming from. He uttered his catchphrase from the very first time he had come into this world. Hey, guess it's playtime. Abandoned church, 2 a.m. It was still dark out, so no one saw ISSEI wandering. He couldn't teleport to his destination, as he didn't know where the source was in the first place. His journey had led him to a rundown church. The malice was heaviest there, and was the core of the wave he had felt earlier, no doubt. As he got closer, the stench of crow was made very apparent. This was fallen angel territory. He also felt the trace of faith coming from within as well. Actually, it wasn't a trace anymore. The aura had grown larger than the church itself and rivaled the malice that surrounded it. Was there a quarrel amongst believers and non-believers happening inside? Whatever the case, ISSEI felt it his duty to investigate. Teleporting inside and on a ledge, what he saw was made him frown. There stood Yuma, or at least someone who looked exactly like her. Wearing what can only be described as S&M gear. To her left stood a tall woman with a figure just as voluptuous as hers, wearing clothing that revealed a lot of her cleavage. To he, Our right was a girl who looked no older than 12 or 13, and she gave off a spoiled brat feeling. Directly behind her was the man of the group, clad in a trenchcoat and gloves with a fedora topping his head. They were on an altar, with a large number of people standing directly behind them wearing KKK-like robes, probably exorcists. There was a blonde girl, likely in her mid to late teens, chained up on a rusty cross on the altar. She was letting out an ear-piercing scream as a green light enveloped her, as if she was in agonizing pain. This disturbed ISSEI, but didn't even move the fallen. The screaming died down, and the four who ISSEI presumed to be the ringleaders started talking. "TCH, this is taking longer than I thought." The one that looked like Yuma but taller spoke first. "Thankfully, it seems to be almost extracted. Judging from the intensity of her screams. Lady Raynor, you're saying that it's almost time." The kid of the group spoke next. "So Yuma's real name was Raynor, huh?" ISSEI knew she was a fallen, but didn't know much of anything else. "Patience is a virtue, Mittelt. Not that we're virtuous beings anyway." It was the blue-haired, older woman's turn next. ISSEI continued, taking notes, committing their names and faces to memory. "Hee, you're evil Calawarner." The man spoke next, although ISSEI didn't care much for his name. He was the only non-female there, so he had already decided to kill him. Turning around, Raynor spoke in an authoritative tone. "Listen up. I've got a schedule to keep for the evening of today. I have to confirm the existence or lack thereof of a sacred gear user. So I won't be coming back until then. Don't screw anything up." The exorcists responded with a bow, and started to head back to their resting chambers. Most of them were low-level grunts that were promised that they could touch Raynor or Calawarner if they helped them succeed, and there was one lolicon who wanted a date with Mittelt. Turning back to her fellow fallen, she issued them orders as well. "You three are in charge until I get back, of course. I have to prepare for my date with this loser. You all know what to do." With that, she took her leave. The other three fallen stood there, fraternizing by the pained corpse of the blonde. ISSEI had already placed a soundproofing barrier around the church while watching. This display sickened him, and his dragon instincts began to kick in. The girl was the one who was exuding that enormous aura of faith from before, tipping him off that she was the believer. He hadn't thought that any one person could give off this much faith. So it astounded him and moved him into action. Gentlemanly as he was always a vicious fighter from the time he murdered that stray devil as an infant. Their screams would not be heard, and their prayers for mercy would not be heeded. He was going to be their god tonight, their dragon god. "No, please." Those were the last words the exorcist ever muttered. I had pushed his hand through his chest and gradually ripped out his heart, watching him plead as he struggled futilely to preserve his fleeting life. Crushing his heart in his hand and drinking the blood from it. ISSEI tossed the worthless human to the wayside. He had counted 200 members when he was scouting out the situation. He had ran through 150 of them so far, killing them each in a different but equally as agonizing way. He tore the fingers off one of them and burrowed them into the exorcist's eye sockets and through the brain with extreme force. He made one of them eat their own leg before he broke their neck. Skinning someone's face off and shoving it up their anus never sounded so fun, until tonight. ISSEI didn't know why he had gotten this way. Normally he'd just decapitate them and be done with it, but he felt that painless death was too kind a fate for them. They had tortured the girl, whom he felt an odd attraction to for some reason. It wasn't romantic, it was more like she gave off a scent that dragons like him seemed to find irresistible. He'd figure it out later as he rescued her. Mowing through the last 50 exorcists and returning to the center of the church, the only targets left were the three fallen. "Hello, fallen angel Sans." ISSEI had reverted back to his polite mannerisms and smile. Underneath this guise, however, was the cold-bloodedness of a killer had just murdered 200 people like it was a stroll in the park. "Can we talk?" "What? Who are you?" The trenchcoat man spoke. Those words sealed his doom. ISSEI disappeared, reappearing in front the man and slamming his fist into his gut. Annihilation wave. With those words, the nameless fallen had burst into black flames, screaming as his life force was slowly burned away by a sphere of flames that had enveloped him. "It doesn't matter what my name is, really." Having incinerated the last surviving male in the vicinity, ISSEI turned his attenti. His eyes had turned into slits, and his face was dangerously calm. Like he'd done this 1,000,001 times already. The fallen were easily able to tell that they were outclassed. I'm not one to harm women, especially helpless ones. It'd make me happy if you two could just disappear. He said his piece with a smile, though the killing intent from moments earlier hadn't subsided. The fallen were mildly insulted, but decided that air life was more precious than getting back at an abomination like him for an offhanded insult. Spreading their wings, they all but burst through the church windows trying to flee. ISSEI turned his attention to the altar and thought of what to do next. I'll need to get back at Rainer somehow too. I don't like harming or leading on women, but this calls for action. ISSEI thought long and hard. Killing her would be much too simple, he needed something more elaborate. Turning her over to the devils was out of the question too, they'd just obliterate her all the same. He finally settled on something. I'll just break her belief like she tried to do to this girl, then. ISSEI was downright cruel when the situation called for it, a trait he'd inherited from his mother who once had a burning hatred for her husband. He didn't know what they were torturing her for, but it couldn't have been anything even remotely reasonable. He turned back to the blonde, who had since passed out from the pain she went through. I can't leave the girl here either. She's hurt, badly. Yuma-san said she'd be back after our date, so I can just take her to my house with me. ISSEI destroyed the chains holding the blonde believer, and made off with her into the night. It wasn't as dark anymore as when he first came out. School starts in about 4 hours. ISSEI had taken his time killing the exorcists, which lengthened his stay. It was now 4 o'clock on the dot. It wasn't that he needed the sleep, it was just that he didn't know how long it would take this sister to heal. He decided to just teleport home. Upon arrival, he laid the girl down on his bed, and went to lounge in the couch. He'd need another bath after this debacle. ISSEI's house, 7:30 p.m. Era. Where am I? The blonde-haired girl had awakened. After asking the generic damsel in distress question about her rescuer's location, she saw a particularly sinful sight. Kimochi. ISSEI had just finished his bath, and was coming out of the bathroom in his own personal bathrobe, a loose bath towel. Needless to say, years of training from literal gods and goddesses, not to mention his own inherent, immensely durable body, led to him being chiseled. He wasn't the bodybuilder type of ripped, though he could be if he so chose. He was lean and well-defined in all areas. He figured this would help him search for a mate like his parents wanted. Having stumbled onto a stack of paperback reading materials that Amaterasu had dubbed God Bods. "Oh, you're awake, believer-san." ISSEI walked over to the bed he had set her own. His towel covered everything important, but that was all. What? I don't. She was in a panic, not from his power, but from the sight. Being a former holy maiden, the church hadn't told her much about things outside of religious boundaries, but the wet sensation she was feeling was said to be a sign that her chastity was in danger. "I don't have much time, believer-san. I'll just say I'm glad that you're awake. Just stay here for a while and I'll explain everything once I come back from school, see ya." ISSEI's tone didn't indicate any danger, so she eased up a bit. ISSEI dashed out of the room, and was about to close the door. This threw her into a panic. Wait. Could you tell me your name, kind sir? She was still timid. After all, they had just met in a rather suspect situation. But she seemed to be willing to trust more easily and forgive than most would. "Oh, me. I'm ISSEI, a first year at Kuo Academy, nice to meet ya. Although, we kinda already met last night, hee. Last night? Oh my god, what happened? Had her chastity already been stolen? Well, I rescued you from those fallen, came back here, set you down, and proceeded to take a bath because of all the work I did." Deadpanning, ISSEI summed up the current situation quickly because time was running down. He could just teleport, but that felt like cheating since almost every other student had to get there in a non-magical way. It'd be bad if I didn't know your name and you knew mine. What is it, miss? A few seconds passed by before the girl revealed her name. "I'm Asia Argento. I'm in your care, if that's all right." School passed without much of a hitch, as ISSEI had predicted. His meeting with the devils of the student council was today, as well as his date with Yuma. But he had already taken measurements for this dilemma. He had created a clone of himself 30 minutes prior and told said clone to stand by at a nearby restaurant while masking his aura. He couldn't risk any of the factions of supernatural beings detecting his clone. His clone would be the one to conduct the meeting with the devils, since any knowledge gained by a clone went back to the main body when dispersed. ISSEI himself would see to the date with Yuma, since she had ordered the torture of Asia. It was now directly after school. ISSEI had begun to walk towards the gate of the school, before dodging two measly fists that he felt coming a mile away. Keeping his hands in his pockets, he swung his foot upwards by reflex, knocking the two instigators into the sky. He didn't need to dodge. The fists wouldn't have even tickled him, but his combat prowess simply took over. A pair of glasses fell down to the ground as he turned back and looked at them. Ah, I guess it was those two idiot Sans. The jock and the one with glasses. ISSEI honestly liked watching them get beat up from time to time. It helped alleviate a bit of stress to laugh at such a comical duo. He never deemed them important enough to remember their names, though. Continuing on, he came to the gate. Mentally contacting his clone, he performed the substitution technique with it. This allowed him to switch places with any relatively close object without anyone noticing. The clone was ordered to go to the Orc building, so it did. None of the devils would notice since the clone's aura was indistinguishable from ISSEI's own. And they weren't aware of his full power yet. Now in the restaurant, ISSEI went over his plan again. He was sure the date was going to end in a fight, so he made steps to Tr. Ace in the event that something out of the ordinary, like citizens being around, happened. He'd set up a barrier around the general area where he was going to be taking her, and also had made sure to limit himself to using only his fists. As Raynor was not an opponent that he had to worry about much, and he wanted to avoid causing too much damage to the space in the immediate vicinity. Most of all, though, he made it a priority to not kill her. He had other plans to say the least. Kuo Central Plaza, 5 p.m. ISSEI had left the restaurant and came to the plaza to wait on Raynor. His clone was doing a great impression of him. At least from what he could tell of the brief mental image he could get. Not being a master of the technique, ISSEI can't link his senses with a clone's, instead. Only being able to conjure up a brief mental link that will break if he loses concentration. It was exactly 2 hours after school, enough time for him to zap back home and freshen up. Oh, he had expla in things more thoroughly to Asia as well. Flashback. Asia-san. Asia-san. Where are you? ISSEI called out Asia's name. He had decided to teleport back to his home and freshen up. Even if it was just a farce. Looking suave never hurt anyone, and he had to let Asia know what was going on. Eventually just deciding to sense her aura since he couldn't find her, he concentrated and followed it to a door. Ah, Asia-san. Found you. He opened the door to a rather unexpected sight. Issei-san. Asia had her hot pin her buttocks, descending towards the toilet. She froze in shock, unable to do any of the cliché things a girl normally would in this situation or react at all. Ah, I see you need your privacy. Sorry about entering before knocking, I'll wait outside. Issei, unfazed by the incident, simply shut the door and stood idly by. Asia, on the other hand, was as rigid as stone for the next 15 minutes. After getting over her initial shock and finishing her business, she opened the door. Ah, finally finished. Well, Asia-san, I have something to tell you. Issei cut to the chase, seeing not much of a need to beat around the bush with a holy maiden like herself. Asia, till reeling slightly from the bathroom incident, simply shook her head up and down as to say, continue. I have a date today, with Yuma, Raynor-san. She did some very horrible things to you, and I intend on getting revenge for that. As you are not a bad person. Issei was very blunt on matters such as these, as he did not enjoy the idea of someone torturing his friends to say the least. Are you going to, kill her Issei-san? Asia had to choke out the word, kill. She thought it horrible for anyone to lose their lives no matter their sin. The Lord offers repentance to all sinners, no matter the form is what she was taught. However, she knew full and well that those with power were ultimately the ones who made the decisions. Even her God followed this simple rule, as he himself had immense power. The greatest in all of heaven. A stream of tears began to well up in her eyes, Not being able to stomach being powerless to stop a slaughter from happening, even if it was intended for a fallen one and her former captor. Well, that depends on you, Asia-san. At those words, Asia's downtrodden expression turned into one of curiosity. It was her decision. Issei, seeing the aforementioned look, explained himself. As heartless as Rainer-san is, she has not personally wronged me. Her fate lies in the hands of the person whom she has wronged most recently, and that happens to be you. All I'd be doing is committing simple murder, and that's not justice. Justice is the voice of the wronged being heard. So, Asia-san, what is your justice? This confused Asia like no other thing had done prior. She was to make the decision. She was a powerless nun who could heal devils, fallen, and angels alike. She had no place making decisions concerning the fate of those with power, but something spurred her on. I don't want you to kill her, Issei-san. Anything but that. Anything you say. Issei's comical aura of mischief had returned. Asia was, frankly, a bit scared, but thou. Gt Issei to be a trustworthy individual. He hadn't tried to violate or ogle her in this past day, and he was quite the gentleman from the display he had just put on moments earlier. She silently entrusted him to do the right thing. After all, she couldn't get married anymore since he had just seen her naked, so she was stuck with him. End flashback. Issei-san. Did I keep you waiting? It was Yuma. 30 minutes had passed at the plaza, but Issei was a patient man. No, you didn't, Yuma-san. Shall we go? Taking his arm into her bountiful cleavage, Issei escorted the fallen all around the plaza. They went shopping, out to eat, playing traditional and some non-traditional Japanese games, and took photos. 2 hours passed and the sun began to set as they wound down their date at a fountain just outside of the urban area they had occupied on their date previously. Yuma ran ahead of Issei, taking baby steps forward as she got closer to the fountain. Yano, Issei, this has been a memorable affair. She turned around. And I want to do something to commemorate it. Issei had never been on a full-blown date before, but he was pretty sure he did everything right from what little Amaterasu had told him about women. Never mind that, he was sure of what she was going to say next. Deciding to play along, he replied back. And what would that be, Yuma-san? Feigning a look of curiosity. He was oddly excited for the coming turbulence. Yuma leaned in, whispering in his ear. Would you die for me? So soft. Issei had cupped her boob and was admiring the suppleness, completely ignoring her words. He's a gentleman, but even he needs a release every now and then, and what better a target than a bad-mannered fallen? What the hell? Hands off, you perv. Rainer dropped her act, instantly assuming her true form. Black wings grew out of her back, she grew taller, her voice tumbled down a pitch, and she wore what most would describe as S&M attire. I was going to give you a little show before I killed you. But the gloves are off now. Forming a light spear and hurling it with her surprisingly large amount of physical strength, Rainer scoffed at such a lowly being even dreaming of touching her like that. Issei punched the spear away, suffering no adverse effects from making contact with it. He uttered his signature phrase with a smirk. Playtime. Disappearing out of Rainer's vision. He reappeared directly in front of her and hit her with a right straight to the gut. This knocked the wind out of her, though Issei had limited himself to being on equal terms with her in terms of raw power. Regaining her composure and snarling at the impudent boy, she summoned 2 light spears and linked them together, forming a literal double-edged sword. I will kill you. Charging at him, she brandished her weapon as she flew. Seconds later, she made contact, and began to slash wildly. Issei had gotten into a stance but dropped his fists. Instead, he held up only one finger. With it, he calmly parried all of Rainer's strikes and lectured her as he did it. Think Goku parrying Trunks the first time they met. There aren't a lot of fallen that can do this that I know of, so I'll give you that. Yuma-san. However, your strikes aren't focused at all, you have no clear goal in mind other than the end result, and you don't seem to be suited for this type of fighting style in the first place. Issei was a master of the sword, he had to be if he wanted to wield the sword of Kusanagi with any type of effectiveness. Panting after her flurry, Rainer was enraged. Don't mock me, you low-class filth. Forming several light spears and chaining them together end to end, she created a spinning disc. Issei didn't look like he had even broken a sweat, and that made her mad more than anything. Levitating the disc and making it spin more violently, she prepared for her final attack. She sent the violently rotating disc at ISSEI, hoping to see it run him through and separate his top from his lower body. To her pleasure, the disc did just that. Rainer dropped her head in relief and allowed her body to relax, believing she had won. Honestly, where did you learn to fight? ISSEI had appeared behind her, grabbing hold of her. She was stunned. How could he have survived that? Simple illusions, if you're wondering. The me that was cut in half was a simple clone. I could have dispersed it if I wanted to, but this way is more fun. ISSEI's explanation cut into her pride. He was having fun. Did this even register as a battle to him? She slowly began to realize that she was outclassed in the worst way possible. Oh, by the way, this me is a clone too. I will explode in a few minutes. Any last words? This flung Rainer into a panic. She didn't want to die yet. Not because of not having lived her life or anything like that, but because she was a pure coward when she didn't have the advantage. She also knew not to look a gift horse in the mouth either. Wait. Stop. I surrender. I'll do whatever you want, just let me go. Her tone was honest, but her words were laced with the hint of an ulterior motive. If you can't beat M, join M. Anything. Well, since you mentioned it, I took care of your other fallen friends by the way. Wait, what? ISSEI's clone knocked her out cold. A mischievous grin spread across his face, already knowing what he was planning to do with her. ISSEI's house, 9 p.m. ISSEI had told Asia to SD a present for her, so she did. When the familiar sensation of overwhelming power came washing over her, she knew he had returned. What she didn't know was what this present actually was. Hello, Ojoyu-sama. A maid uniform was attached to a stunning beauty, complete with white angel wings, a halo, and the words Head Maid Yuma, written on her palms in kanji. Her tone also had an enormous amount of bite and venom in it, which made ISSEI laugh. Anyo, Asia didn't want to question the situation, but it was too awkward not to at least try. Well, you said anything other than killing her, and she said anything as well, so I figured why not. She's got the looks, and with a little bit of elbow grease, she'll have the skills too. She'll be our own personal maid. Anyo, maid. Asia was still confused, but thankful. As long as he didn't kill her. Yes, maid. ISSEI had a few motives for making Yuma into a maid. Foremost being honoring Asia's wish, but he also wanted cheap caretaking by a busty woman. Amaterasu had spoiled him to the point of no return, though he rarely showed it. There was also the Str. Ainge voice in his lucid dreaming that kept telling him that infinity knows best. Shortly afterward, he'd get a massive craving for sweets. As she promised, she'll do anything we tell her to. I don't like ordering around women. But a promise is a promise. Well then, I'll be going to bed, have fun with her Asia-san. And just like that, the goofball known as ISSEI went off into slumber, leaving Sia and Yuma, who was told she could only assume her Rainer persona when told to, standing in the kitchen all alone. Anyo, Rainer-san, I'm not sure why you're here, and I'm sure as hell not sure why I'm here. But let's just agree to never talk. Sound fair? Rainer was visibly annoyed. Anyo, you forgot the Ojoyu-sama. Asia had a sheepish smile going on. She was the purest of maidens, but she was going to have fun with this. I hate my life. Orc clubroom. It was morning. All the members of the ORC had gathered, ISSEI included. To his left stood Rainer, and to his right, Asia. Quote ellipsis. And that's how I ended up with my very own maid. ISSEI had just finished explaining the entirety of the situation to Rias. He told them of Asia and the fallen angels encroaching on her territory, and of how he handled the situation. He also enthusiastically told them how Rainer, or Yuma as he preferred to call her, was now under his and Asia's employment. So you mean to tell me that the fallen standing right there is your maid? Ria's face was as blank as Kaniko's usual one. Kaniko's face was even more blank than usual this time around. Akino was staring daggers at Rainer, who in turn glared back with contempt. Kiba was suppressing a laugh. Hi, Bushu, ISSEI bellowed out with the most sincere of tones. Akino, who was previously locked in stare of death contest with Yuma, regained her trademark smile. While Rainer simply turned back to staring at the ceiling and frowning. Rias was confused, but mentally accepting that there wasn't much she could do even if she demanded that he hand her over. And also mulling over the question he had asked her about Asia. Kiba was smiling like an idiot, at the breaking point of laughing. Kaneko started chewing on some sweets, which caught Issei's eye, which prompted her to scoff in his direction. Asia was extremely tense, being so close to the damned of her religion, but willing to give them a chance as would her lord. As long as she doesn't cause any problems for Sonas and especially my peerage, I think it'll be fine. After all, you yourself are very strong Issei-kun, I think you could handle it. Rias was including Issei when she said her peerage. Nonetheless, she was far greedier than her appearance would lead one to believe, exemplifying devil behavior in a way. Just then, a teleportation crest bearing the grimoire Y symbol appeared in the center of the room. Along with it, came a crest that made Rias sigh in anticipated exhaustion. Out of the grimoire crest sprung a woman with groomed silver hair, a maid outfit, which made Issei compare hers and Yuma's and a stern expression. She appeared to be in her 20s. Her aura was extremely oppressive and caused an alarm in Issei's head to go off. She could wipe out all who stood here, aside from himself, with the greatest of ease. She must be one of the ultimate class devils Rias had told him about when they first met. Ah, Razor. Rias spoke the name of the man who had appeared out of the unidentified crest with clear disgust. The rest of the members of her peerage had taken to showing their disdain as well in various ways, though Akino was the best at hiding it. Rias, my dear, how are you and your peerage doing? The man's voice grated on Issei's nerves, as it oozed arrogance and false care. This was not the way a genuine gentleman acted. From the looks of it, every other spectator was thinking along the same lines. Just fine, thank you very much. Rias' tone was as hostile as Rainer's when she was mad, a very clear indication of the situation. He was an unwanted guest. Now, is that any way to speak to your fiancé? Fiancé. This douche was her fiancé. Issei thought this a fate worse than death already, so his sympathy went out to Rias. He decided to find out what others were thinking, so he read a few minds. TCH, as expected of a filthy devil. Rainer had more or less had her hatred of devils justified by this man, at least in her eyes. A fallen and Razor-san. This day is quite the bad one. Akino, who had done so well keeping in her emotions, couldn't hide them from Issei. Why was she against Fallen so much more vehemently than everyone else anyway? Suck it, douche. Issei had to stop a grin from forming on his face. Kaneko always seemed to make him happy. What in the hell was this maid? She was as stone cold as Kaneko, but in a not so cute way. Moving onto the couch where Rias sat, Razor placed his hands on her thigh and around her neck, inching closer to her. Rias merely turned her head with a pout. Look, Rias, I understand your feelings. I really do, but why can't you understand that the future of us pureblood devils is at stake here? I try my best to put up with your low-level peerage, and all I get in return is attitude. What's wrong with you all? My peerage is far from filthy, and who I marry will be my own choice. Razor, I will never marry you. Rias exclaimed her intention loud and proud, for all to hear. This only served to make Razor retaliate. Fine then, I'll have to use force then. Maybe I'll take that stacked vice president of yours over there as well to compensate for the rudeness you all have shown me. Issei felt his blood boil over. This man was despicable, in every sense of the word. A proud, arrogant elitist who thought himself too important for his own fucking boots. His aura slowly began to rise. Intel. That's quite enough, Razor-san. My name is Graphia Lucifuge and I am the head maid of Sears Lucifer, sent here to moderate this meeting in case something like this were to occur. If you do not step down, I will have to intervene. Her words were completely serious, and her aura intensified even more than previously. Issei was certain she'd be a 2GH opponent if things were to take a turn for the worst, as he'd likely have to obliterate the entire schoolyard just to injure her. Everyone else in the room felt their bodies being pressed down aside from Issei of course. And responded as such. Well, if the strongest queen requests it, I am in no position to protest. Razor stopped his antics, proving that this, Graphia, was the top dog of the devils in this room. On to more appropriate matters, Sears has suggested an alternative in case this happens. Would you both agree to a rating game? A rating game. I'm at such an advantage compared to Ria's puny peerage, hee. I agree, and I'll even agree to give them a handicap. You may have 9 days to train if you wish to do so, dear. Razor was wholly confident that he'd crush his fiancée with ease, which grated eyes. You'll learn not to underestimate my family, Razor. Graphia, I agree as well and accept the handicap. Rias was enraged, but did a great job of not showing it. Whomever it be, they wouldn't be shown mercy if they insulted or harmed even one of her precious family. All right then, the rating game will be held in 9 days and is unofficial as far as the underworld is concerned. If there are no farther questions, I will take my leave, but not before I issue one of my own. She was about to address the obvious elephant in the room. What exactly are those three, especially the fallen, doing here? Graphia's question scared Asia and made Rainer duck in cover, but ISSEI simply smiled while looking at Rias, asking if he should be the one to explain. They are guests and fellow students of mine. All 3 of them are linked to the supernatural, as you've probably figured out. The one in the middle is called ISSEI-san, the one to the left is called Yuma. The one to his right is a human he rescued, named Asia. Rias had partially lied, only ISSEI was a fellow student of hers, though he did ask if she could pull some strings and get Asia and Yuma in his transfers. I'm not sure what ISSEI himself is. But he is very powerful. Well then, good to meet all of you. I shall be taking my leave and trust that no farther altercations will be had. With that, she disappeared back from whence she came. Razor, who had yet to leave, jeered at ISSEI. Ha! Rias thinks you, an unknown, is powerful. I don't know if you're one of her peerage or not, but you don't look even the tiniest bit strong. Still, I wouldn't be surprised if she came to you for help. You're just the type of person she loves to get, weak and pitiful. Here, I'll summon my peerage and give you an example of power. He snapped his fingers and flames appeared, then disappeared as 15 females stood lined up end to end. Here, I'll have you face my pawn. That way, you won't accidentally die from one hit. Rainer Yuma simply laughed internally at the man's ignorance. Asia didn't really like what he had said, but kept her mouth shut for fear of a fight breaking out. The orc simply watched with disdain, save Rias, who oddly enough had a smile on her face. She probably knew what was coming next. ISSEI had already vanished from his chair. The blue-haired girl who had stepped forth was lain out, and the floor was torn up where she had been knocked out. Reappearing in front of Razor, ISSEI uttered but a few words while raising his aura to the level of Graphia's. Wanna play? Razor jumped back, startled by the sudden burst. His peerage was stunned as well. Why was someone this powerful even here? ISSEI raised his aura to max, mimicking the power held by the 2 heavenly dragons, Didrag and Albion, in their primes. Everyone, save for Rias and Akino, who had put up shields that weren't holding out well but allowed them to stand, was forced down to their knees in a position of subjugation. Razor and company quickly jumped through their crest to get as far away as possible from the frightening aura. ISSEI calmed down once they were gone. What was that, ISSEI-san? Rias was dumbfounded. She knew he was strong. But this power was overwhelming and even godly. That was my true power, Rias-san, and I intend to use it to help you win that rating game, as it was called. You mean, you'll join my peerage and fight for me? Rias was elated. Everyone else, especially Asia and Yuma, were too afraid to speak. Yuma recounted that she had basically been knocking on death's door challenging this boy. Oh, how foolish she was. Sadly, no. I don't plan on joining your peerage, but I will help train you all to find out your strengths and weaknesses and cover them up as efficiently as possible. In other words, let's go play. Quote, the shockwave from ISSEI's power was felt around the world, leading certain beings to react to it. Dimensional gap. Was that our son? He's grown as strong as the red and white ones in a short time frame. Nice to see he's progressing, but he's still got a long way to go. Ophis spoke her thoughts, as the power had tickled her a bit. He's still stronger than most gods, dear, cut him some slack. Red was floating around aimlessly, looking for his next vacation. What, and have him end up like you? Well, you did have sexu with me, so I can't be all that bad. I hate it when you make sense. Ophis concluded their conversation, one of the few they've had since launching ISSEI into Japan. Boosted gear. Albion, is that you, you white fucknugget? Divine dividing. Didrag. Is that you wanna be great red? Parts unknown. So there are still strong warriors out there. Albion, what was that you just mentioned about great red? A silver-haired man appearing to be in his late teens spoke to a white gauntlet. Whoever this guy is, he's certainly giving you a run for your money, Valley Kun tilde. I wonder if he'd want to help me out, Naya tilde. Kuroka, for all I care. He can help you do whatever you're trying to do, as long as he fights me first. So cold, Valley Kun tilde. That's fine though, in fact, it's perfect. This kitty likes to play around. Issei never thought he'd be teaching anyone, let alone a peerage of devils who had gotten in over their heads. He had brought Rias and Ko to an enchanted forest that Amaterasu ne dubbed the Forest of Illusions. True to its name, everything that occurred within its confines was rendered an illusion, even things like death. It was the ideal place for training for that very reason, Issei had been given the key to enter this special space by the moon god Tsukuyomi, whom governed it. You might as well be standing still, Kaneko-chan. Issei was currently engaged in a fist fight with Kaneko, lecturing her much the same way he did Rainer when they fought. Rainer and Asia were still back at Issei's makeshift house. He dodged, ducked, and swiveled around every hit she threw. With her growing more exhausted by the second, bringing a palm up to her face, he whispered out advice. This is what happens when you're too slow to even dream of hitting your opponent. Incineration. With that word, a pillar of flames shot forth and caught Kaneko, burning her to a crisp and leaving her charred body on the forest floor. Her remains vanished, and she reappeared atop a distant tree. Issei had asked Tsukuyomi to make the respawn system reposition Rias and her peerage in a different part of the forest every time they got killed. This served the purpose of not only enhancing their sensory skills, as they'd have to find and regroup with their teammates or head toward the battle if there was one, but it'd also enhance their teamwork, as they'd be aware of their teammates' location and be able to coordinate their attacks. You're wide open. Kiba, dashing out of a bush, leapt at Issei and swung his sword downward, hoping to slice Issei in half with one clean blow. Of course I am. Why would I need to worry about you? Issei stood motionless, and took the sword strike head on. He didn't budge an inch, instead Kiba's sword snapped in half. Dragon hide is truly a tough thing. Your technique, timing, and foot speed are all impeccable. That would have cleaved a lesser devil in half, but you might as well be trying to throw pebbles at a hurricane if you think that was going to tickle me or anyone else even remotely strong. Issei didn't like insulting anyone, it contrasted with his gentlemanly nature, but it was the only way to get them to go all out. Especially one red-headed king. No one talks to my family like that. An enormous bolt of red, demonic energy shot at Issei from the clouds above. Rias had been biding her time, although it seems like that last comment had gotten to her. Issei had been shit-talking her and her peerage for a week now, which was a brilliant plan if one took into account their tempers, especially Rias. Issei smirked, then dodged the blast before it made contact. He landed in a distant lake, since he needed to jump that far to get out of the blast radius. Rias' last attack could have obliterated the entirety of Issei surmised. Now, Akeno. Rias yelled at her queen, who was clad in shrine maiden attire. Akeno conjured up dark storm clouds, licking her lips as she prepared to bring down a torrent of violence upon Issei's head. You foo. I like men with stamina. I'm sure Issei-kun will keep me entertained even if this hits him. A large bolt of lightning was summoned forth, striking Issei head on and electrifying the lake all around him as well. Akeno was amazed and blushing at what she saw next. Rias, ever the hothead, was fuming. Kaneko saw the clouds gathering and recognized it as Akeno's attack, so she had come to the clearing where the lake was to see the action. Kiba laying low but was present as well. Note to self, avoid being around Akeno whenever she's in S mode. Second note, ask Rias why Akeno hasn't taken the middle class promotion test yet. There stood Issei, with his finger and his thumb near his chin, in thought while the electricity shot through his body. He had actually felt a very TNY amount of pain from Akeno's fully charged attack. Since he estimated himself to be as strong as a prime heavenly dragon, this meant that last attack would have utterly eviscerated someone below the level of a high-class devil. And severely wound a high-class. Okay, stop. Training over, let's hit the hay for the day guys. Issei yelled out to his trainees, prompting a sigh from Rias as she had been bested yet again. There had been a bet made that none of Rias' peerage could cause Issei any pain. So far, none of them had succeeded in so much as making him wince even when they hit him. He only person's attacks whom he even noticed at first were Kaniko's, and that's because her trait was to hit like a literal tank. What Rias didn't know was that Akino's last attack had actually succeeded. Though it was of no consequence to Issei ultimately. Occult Research Club Room, 9 p.m. Issei teleported them back to their club room. He stood in the center of the room, mentally mulling over their individual strengths and weaknesses. Cracking his neck, he started going over as everyone listened. Alright, it's been a week. You guys did a lot better than I thought you'd do, but there are some pretty glaring holes in yourselves. Quote, spit it out you amphibian. That elicited a small eyebrow twitch from Issei as Rias blurted that out. She had taken to calling him that on the third day of TR. Aiming because he was adept at using the marine terrain to his advantage. No matter what, she and Akino had always gotten drenched, making their clothing see-through. Issei would simply smile at them. If that happened, and Akino would smile back, though Rias would blow more fuses than she already had. Clearing his throat, Issei moved the focus back on the topic at hand. Anyway, as I was saying, you guys have pretty glaring weaknesses. He listed them off, being a bit of a smartass in the process. Kiba, I'd say you hit like a girl, but that would be an insult too. Kaniko. Kiba's sweat dropped at this, not sure how to respond. Your technique rivals Master's, but your power output is just not enough. Kaniko, a tank is exactly what you are. Your punches could literally bring down mountains. But that's only because mountains are stationary. What good is power if you can't hit the target? Kaniko simply turned away and started eating sweets. Akino, I firmly believe you are the most balanced of the group. Your power output is such that it doesn't tickle, but the nature of your attack also means that it doesn't lack speed and your precise control over it to where you could hit me conveys your technique. I give you a pass. Akino was delighted, though no one was sure if it was because she was turned on at the memory of frying Issei, or that she had gotten nothing but compliments. Rias awaited her evaluation with bated breath. She loved her peerage dearly, but was probably the sorest loser in the world. She hated losing at anything, especially to Akino. Issei turned his head towards her, ready to give his verdict. Rias, you're not much different from Akino. Rias' face brightened at this, but you have one major flaw. Her face quickly adjusted, conveying her displeasure at having needed to improve at something. But nonetheless willing to listen. You're much too hot-headed, announcing your attacks for the world to hear and losing your head over petty insults. I have no intention of telling you how to run things, but from my experience, kings and rulers are supposed to be the most level-headed individuals on the battlefield. I purposefully insulted you all every chance I got just to see how you would react. The others were frustrated, but none took it as far as you. You might have even hit me had you not brazenly shouted out and given away your position. Rias was starstruck. She had never thought about anything like that. It was true that she was a little overboard in her familial love, but she never thought it'd be a hindrance in battle. Now that she thought about it, she couldn't be mad at Issei's evaluation of her. If they were going to be facing opponents as tough as Issei anytime soon, she needed to learn fast. She still felt terrible about losing to Akino, though. I take it that means you don't think we'll be ready to take on Razor's group, right? Rias was feeling down. She didn't know what to do if someone who's shown power on par with her be. Rother couldn't train them up to even beating others around their general level. Oh, heavens no. You or Akino alone at this point could solo Razor and his lackeys. It wouldn't be easy, but you both could do it. All of you are just overkill. Rias, shocked at this declaration, questioned on. Are you serious? Yeah, it's been that way for about 2 days now. Based on my observations, none of of your peerages were definitively stronger than the other at their position, until now of course. You could have given him all he could handle with just regular training, let alone my training regimen. Issei spoke and everyone's faces brightened, except for Rias, who had a tick mark. So, you mean to tell me that the rest of that hellish torture you call training could have been avoided? She was now sitting, tapping her finger on her desk with a formed orb of demonic energy in her other hand. Issei had devised an escape plan in case something like this happened. He didn't want the schoolyard Destroyed after he'd already done something as stupid as revealing his true power for the world to feel out. In preparation for the raiding game, yes, it could have been avoided. The only reason I continued was, he was cut off as the orb that Rias wielded had charred the spot where he stood. The rest of the club members were getting a good laugh out of the situation, all of them being roughly equal in power now to higher-end middle-class devils, with Akino and obviously Rias topping out at being low-high class, so Rias' extra-large orb didn't faze them. I see that temper is still intact. It won't matter much though, I guess. Issei rubbed the back of his head sheepishly and smiled gently at the scene. He was never the type to be friendly with creatures outside of the pantheon he was raised in. But these devils weren't like devils at all. Short-tempered, manipulative, and greedy, yes, but that's something that can be said about humans as well. Well, I guess I'll get going. Yuma-san and Asia-san are waiting for me. And it's pretty late. Good luck in your contest, Devil Sans. Wait just a moment, Rias shortened his name as a sly sign of affection, trying very subtly to tug at his heartstrings. I've got more questions than I can count about you, but I guess the one that sums them up is, what exactly are you? Rias wanted him, but he didn't seem to be affected by her charm at all. Rather, it was more like she was being pulled in by him instead. Flashback. Dimensional gap. Son, do you know what's special about you? Ophis spoke in a motherly tone. She wasn't holding her child like most mothers would. However, she was simply suspending him by way of telekinesis, his form floating in the void. No, mother, Issei could add a better grasp on things than beings his own age. But his parents were a constant source of confusion. You are you. Who you are will inevitably attract others to you, especially those seeking power for whatever reason. You are the infinite, yet you are also the dream. Okawa-san. Issei had once again been confused. What was this infinite and dream nonsense all about? Oh well, at least he had his dad to lean on to explain things his stoic mother didn't. Kid, there's nobody in this or any other actuality who could understand your mother's moonspeak. You'd be better off trying to kill an orc with a sterilized needle. It was then that Issei gave up hope. Neither of his parents made any sense. Flashback end. I'm a mothering vampire. Issei said his piece with as straight a face as possible. He had recently watched Hellsing Ultimate Abridged. And that's the only thing that came to mind. Rias, dissatisfied with his answer, prepared another ball of demonic energy. Issei, sensing the malice, smiled and swiftly teleported away to his house, leaving all present in the orc in a state of laughter. Save for Rias, of course. She decided to go take a shower. Wouldn't be DXD without fanservice. Issei's house, 10 p.m. Issei teleported into the living room, expecting to see Asia doing her PRAY 5 times a day routine in the kitchen, and Rainer lounging on the couch in a nightgown that was barely legal at best. What he actually saw, however, was a shock. Both his roomies were out cold on the floor, with two figures standing over them. One was a silver-haired boy whose aura resonated with Issei's slightly. And one was a flawless beauty that gave off the same impression that Kaneko gave off. Valley-kun, he's here, and he's quite the looker. Naya tilde, looks are irrelevant. It's his fighting skill that matters, Kuroka. Issei looked over the two intruders for a moment. The one named Valley was stronger at a glance, but the one named Kuroka would be fatal to ignore. Valley seemed to want a fight, but Kuroka wanted. What exactly? He mulled it over, casually tilting his head to dodge the blast of magic that came his way. Ah man, I thought flaring my aura back there would get me into trouble, but I didn't think people as strong as you two would show up so fast. Issei was very bothered. He didn't want to cause a ruckus and then get scolded by Amaterasu. We're not here for a fight to the death, unfortunately. Valley spoke up. We're merely here to gauge your power, for various different reasons. It's a bit much to knock out people's friends, don't you think, Valley? San. Issei wasn't very pleased with their actions. But formality was a subject he excelled in nonetheless. It's the only way to get you to notice us, and in particular, me, Naya tilde. The buxom catgirl ended her sentence with a wink and pushed her cleavage up slightly in her black kimono. Issei noticed that she had curves in all the right places, and wasn't giving off any malice. A lesser man would have already fell to her charm, but Issei was still intrigued. He'd be lying if he said that she wasn't eye candy at the very least, though he won't say that in a situation like this. Well then, I guess we should start. Valley made a white gauntlet appear on his arm, and with it came a voice shouting out commands. He assumed a full suit of armor and his aura spiked. Albion says your power rivals even his, so I'll test it out for myself. This should be fun. Kuroka, the barrier is up, right? Hi, Valley-kun. It's around the general vicinity, enough space for you two to go at it. Issei frowned a bit. Could we take this outside? I don't want to wake the two sleepy heads behind both of you until we've finished, if you please. Valley, not caring where they fought, agreed. Kuroka was just going with the flow, so she agreed as well. I don't know who this Albion fellow is, but if he's as strong as me, it'd be nice to meet him one day. Issei said his last couple of pleasantries, putting his hands in his pockets. He hears you. Now, come, Valley retorted, eager to fight such a strong opponent. Kuroka sat on a nearby bench and watched as the two vanished into thin air. Her eyes followed the two blurs throughout the entire area that the barrier was set up, Valley being on the offensive more so than Issei. Divide. A chant rang out from Valley's gauntlet, and Issei suddenly felt his movements become clumsier. Va. Lee took the opportunity to land a solid gut punch, and Issei spit up a bit of blood. Issei, however, had landed a punch on Valley's face, giving him a bloody nose. Even though your power has been halved, you are still capable of harming me. I'm not going all out, but this is still an impressive feat. What is your name? Name's Issei, and I'm not exactly running on fumes myself, ya know. The fight continued on with each of them exchanging blows, and Valley using divide 2 more times. When the dust settled, Valley's armor had been torn off and Issei's shirt was gone and his pants that he wore for the day partially ripped. Kuroka looked and admired Issei's trained body, purring in appreciation for the sight. Tearing off my armor at 1/8 your original power. You are indeed a strong foe, Issei. You're honestly not that bad yourself. Though it felt like I was fighting 2-on-1 at some points. Issei recalled 3 distinct powers from Valley, though 2 of them overlapped. One decidedly human, one undoubtedly devilish. And one that resonated with him, but he couldn't identify what race it was from. If I'm being honest, you were, but that's a story for another time. Having seen your strength, I have an offer for you. Valley had decommissioned his armor's regenerative properties, showing that he was done fighting. Issei let his aura settle down, all the while keeping an eye on Kuroka. Well, let's hear it. I don't know what to think of you two, but I'm an open-minded type of guy. Issei didn't trust them as far as he could throw them, which was actually pretty far, but you get the point. But if he were to be connected to them by some means, he could glean information on them and whatever else they knew, seeing as how they knew exactly when and where he stayed despite him not even knowing of their existence. How would you like to join my team? Valley remarked casually. You can do whatever you want to me as a bonus, Kuroka said with a wink, a suggestive sway. Being friends with benefits with Kuroka wasn't the most terrible fate someone could suffer, but Issei was a man of few bindings. Sorry, I'm not really big on joining factions or being bossed around like a slave. I do enjoy sparring with you. But I could do that any time I wanted. Issei had turned down the most beautiful girl in his school, so turning down a silver-haired pretty boy was relatively easy for him. The Neko, on the other hand, was actually harder. Faction. Hey, my team belongs to no faction. We do whatever we please. In fact, the only reason Kuroka is here with me right now is because she volunteered. Look, I don't care what you do in your spare time or who you associate yourself with, my only drive is fighting strong opponents. I despise boring relationships like master and servant. Well, that's certainly a deal sweetener. Issei thought. He'd get the benefits of snooping around and gathering information, without the cons of being a servant. The Neko could also help train Asia and Rainer. Issei could tell that she was strong. It seemed like high-class devils would be pushovers for her even. He couldn't shake wanting to get to know her more either, because of the Kaneko-like scent she gave off. Well, if you put it that way, I guess I'll join. Now, if you don't mind, I'll be going back to my partially destroyed home. Issei frowned as he glanced at his home. Some of the blasts rebounded off of the barrier and destroyed the top of it. All right then, we will be in touch shortly. Come, Kuroka. Catch ya later, cutie tilde. They departed, leaving Issei to his own devices. He focused on his home, wishing it to be repaired with all his might. Miraculously, it was. He blinked, and the damage brought a pun. It was like the damage wasn't a part of reality anymore, it had been turned into a mere dream or something. This confused him, but he knew, once again, not to look a gift horse in the mouth. He stepped inside, and stood over Asia and Rainer, whom were still out cold. Sleep spell, huh? I guess they really weren't trying to kill anyone. Pointing his hand out towards the two, he released them from the spell. Rainer was slobbering all over the floor and Asia still had her hands clasped together in a prayer position. They slowly came to, seeing Issei's visage above them. Issei-san, what happened? Asia was the first to regain consciousness. What in the blue hell is going on so late at night? Rainer rose up shortly after, albeit in a groggy manner. Hi guys. We've made some new friends. Thanks for watching. Where to? Issei already had a hunk.